Well,
Okay,
he
good.
was all right. It was sloppy. The games were sloppy. It was sloppy. He's only the world champion because I wasn't there. It's even not that so much anymore. Like it's a forbidden knowledge that I had, where I learned how to grow this plant, and there was this kind of whole lore to it, and this background. It was kind of a forbidden thing to do. I mean, it's passé nowadays to be a weed grower, but I don't know. It still feels the same to me, I guess, from when I was like 15, 16, first started putting plants in the seeds in the ground and seeing something come out of it. Never actually getting a harvest until I was older. But
does it feel spiritual to you?
Yeah, it's got like a mystique to it.
I wonder how much of that is because it's like disreputable.
Yeah, no, that was certainly a big part of it. You know, it's an amazing plant. It's very different the way it grows from a lot of other things I've grown. Just the fact that the trichomes on it, that it produces this copious amounts of oils that have all these different cannabinoids in them that all have different effects, and you know, there's all this lore that you can pick up from these older guys. You know, like my dad grew, and I knew all these other older guys that would grow, and you hear all these bits of like information that have been passed down from one outlaw grower to the next, and a lot of it was bullshit. Some of it was good information, and there's just so much to it. You know, like tomatoes aren't like that. I grow tomatoes. I love growing tomatoes. They don't have the same feel to them that cannabis does. There's nothing quite like it.
Well, luckily Philip Morris got into the cannabis game, so the professionals are going to be taking over the business, professional capitalist class, you know.
Yeah, no, this is something that fucking drives me crazy. So, I didn't grow hemp this last year. I grew the year before. And I grew a lot for smokable, there's a big market for it. And I don't know, so I'm finding, like, you see the marijuana or the smokable, like the THC cannabis or the CBD cannabis that are on the market today. And it's like this shit that's grown in a lab. They're these thick, dense, neon green nuggets that are, they bear little resemblance to the weed that, you know, from when we were younger. And it's because this stuff's grown in a lab. Everything's boiled down to this science. They're grown in light deprivation rooms, all the chemicals and fertilizers and amendments that are added to it. It's all strictly calculated. There's no art to it. And that's what bothers me. Also, the people like the hippie type, the natural, the non-GMO people, who are the people that are probably more likely to smoke weed, are also the people that go after the most mutant types. Like, their tomatoes, they gotta have a you know, farm fresh, locally grown, from the soil, all natural fertilizers, tomato. Same thing with corn. Same thing with peppers, all that stuff. But the weed that they want it to be grown in a freaking lab. And it
really is basically grown in a lab too, like the hydroponic facilities they use to grow it in. Yeah,
no, like I've seen professional labs now to this point. I've got friends that have, in some of the legal states that have, recreational farms. I've seen those farms before. And yeah, it's a lab. It's not, there's nothing natural about it. It's just they're clones that are propagated. They're just shoved full of as many chemicals as they can keep in the plant without the plant dying, in a completely artificial environment. They never see sunlight. They never touch soil. and then you get this, and
30%, baby, let's go.
And it's cool, but just the cognitive dissonance where people don't like people want all natural stuff, all natural foods and fruits and all this crap, but they don't want all natural weed. They don't want weed that was grown or CBD that was grown in a field, something that was touched by somebody's hand, something that's not, because it doesn't. It's all a marketing thing. Is what I'm getting at. It's the big capitalists like Philip Morris, not them so much, but the big marijuana growers. They've put this idea out there of this is what weed is supposed to look like, and if it doesn't look like this, then it's an inferior product. And what they're doing is they're just putting something out there that's kind of an impossible standard for a small farmer to achieve. You know, it's something that you can only do with a giant laboratory and with a bunch of capital behind you to do that. And
it doesn't even look real. It looks fake.
No,
you see it.
It's through that. People grow smoke outdoor weed. It doesn't have to look like that. And here's the thing. When I don't smoke very often, I enjoy the actual smoking of it. I don't want 30% THC. I want something that's like 8% THC so I can puff on it a little bit. Because I like the taste of it. And I want to just do like that a few times, not take a half a hit and have to go lay down and eat a Xanax. You know, that's not a good time for me.
Sound like a beta.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm a lightweight when it comes to weed.
As you know, I would never consume anything manufactured in a lab. Obviously. I was just watching some Hamilton Morris videos. He's very entertaining.
He is.
He may die of starvation at any moment, but he's very entertaining. I don't know how his little body can handle all that shit.
Yeah. I just choked on water.
Like, he'll try anything. He was having people like burn him and then rub like toad venom into his skin. See that one?
No. I think I seen the one where he smoked it.
The one I
saw,
saw,
the same one?
No, this is a more recent one. I think they were burning him. I believe they were burning him or cutting him like to expose and then just like rub. Very strange. He kept having him do it to him. So it must have been enjoyable for him, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I think if I had the understanding of pharmacology that he does, I would be more inclined to try those things. But I think, like, at my age, at my anxiety level, like, if you were to come to me with some new synthetic and you're like, yeah, you know, you can try this, like, I would just be so worried that I'm going to die from it. It's going to cause some issues. I would be too afraid to take it. But I guess he understands what the stuff is and how safe it is. And plus he's got people there that I'm sure he's got medics there whenever he does this stuff.
I'm not sure about that.
Bad happens to him. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just, these are all assumptions. So I got some big plans in the works. Actually, you might be interested in when I get going on it. So be sure to keep you updated. But we're going to see how it goes.
Interesting.
Closing on the house Tuesday. Yeah.
Big plans, huh?
Big plans. Big plans.
Oh, that teaser.
Let's
get into the show, I guess, here. Yeah, no, can we get a hint or what? What's going on, man? Are you transitioning finally?
Finally, yeah. I'm getting the surgery this week. I'm really excited. I still don't know what my name's going to be. I'll probably just pick a symbol like Prince and just go by that.
That's the move. That's the power move.
Yeah.
So your daughter's sort of an activist. What does she read? What does she like to read?
I just got her Howard Zinn, People's History.
Ah, that's an excellent book.
Yeah, she's been going through that. That kind of started from a conversation where she really likes history class. They were like touching certain subjects, but she didn't feel like she felt like it was kind of the same thing every year. Like they just go George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, you know, and we were kind of talking. She's kind of learning about different other stories in U.S. history, and she's also aware of the kind of the conservative move to like ban Martin Luther King, like that's the letter from the Birmingham jail. She brought that up to me. Anyway, so we started talking about Howard Zinn. I got her the book, and yeah, that's what she's into.
I think they don't even teach the labor movement. I wish they would teach labor. Like, they really don't even. It's been so whitewashed, man. That's cool that she's interested, though.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes.
All right.
I try to push her as much as I can I try to lead her in that direction without pushing her. Want her to find the things on her own.
Well, if you push her, she'll go the opposite direction, probably. So
yeah, she'll end up watching Fox News. 8 hours a day, like my sister.
Watching Tucker.
Ugh.
All right, I don't know anything about this story. I didn't really follow this very much. I mean, I already know the entire pharmaceutical industry is crooked as hell. I guess I probably don't know the extent of it, though. The Oxy-Contin thing, it was being laid at the feet of Purdue Pharma, and I guess there's a settlement.
Yeah. This kind of come about. So this week, I think earlier this week, I found out another acquaintance of mine, a very dear friend of a very dear friend of mine, just died, opiate overdose, and I don't know. I was kind of inundated with stories. We heard about this story. There was another story where there was a bunch of West Point cadets that died from fentanyl overdoses. Of course, I would link the fentanyl epidemic as the kind of the outcome of the Oxy-Contin epidemic from the 90s and early 2000s. I think it's just a natural outgrowth of it. But I don't know. Yeah, I figured it was an interesting story to cover.
That. I think fentanyl is a direct result of everything being illegal and hard to get. Fentanyl is not a drug of choice; it's just what's available.
Yeah, no. This is what happens when you get a very large subset of the population addicted to opiates, and then make those opiates impossible to get a hold of, and you have heroin come along, and then fentanyl, and I don't know. I mean, there's some interesting analogs between what's happening now and what happened in China and Britain after the Opium Wars, where you had the initial influx of opiates, like much safer opiates. Opium is incredibly pretty damn safe. Oxy-Contin just by itself is pretty safe for the most part, as long as you don't get too crazy with it. And then they kind of like wipe them out, get rid of them completely out of the population, and then you just there's this void that's left, and kind of everything floods in to fill that void, and there's some really nasty stuff and nasty things that end up happening because you've got a bunch of sick people, and they don't have no treatment for them. And even today in 2022, we still treat them like it's a choice, it's a criminal thing, it's a character flaw, it's and not just an illness. You're a lot harsher on sort of drug use than I am. I'm pretty open. I think it should be just widely available. I don't really see an issue with, especially safe things like opiates. I mean, driving a vehicle is way more harmful. I knew some people that overdosed, but it was always combining opiates with benzodiazepines. Everybody that I knew who had overdosed. I understand now fentanyl has made it a lot different because fentanyl is so powerful by weight. It's 100x more potent than something like oxycodone. But no. So I don't mean to disparage drug use or drug users at all. I think that the vast majority of people that use drugs don't have any issues whatsoever. They're perfectly fine, perfectly functioning members of society, and they should have safe, easy access to those drugs. But I'm saying addiction, as somebody that's been through addiction, I'm
sure, yeah,
you've been down there. Like, that is a sickness, and it's not a state that anybody should want to be in or should have to. At least not addiction where you're trying to chase a high. You know, if you've got a certain chemical dependency that you're able to upkeep, I mean, that's a state that you can survive in kind of indefinitely.
I mean, most people do. They drink coffee. That's a drug addiction.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just kind of speaking about the addiction state that I guess most people like in the U.S. would live in, where you're trying to chase a high and you don't have safe, easy access to a drug. And those people are sick. They're sick.
I don't know about that. I think they just don't have access to what they want. I mean, you could label it an illness, and I know people have done that as an attempt to get health care to these people, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of the issues are with the criminal justice system and the way society's structured. Frankly, you know, these black markets are propped up by the fact that all this stuff is illegal and unregulated. People are overdosing on fentanyl because their products are adulterated with it. There's no regulation, right? To me, that seems to be the primary issue.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah. I mean, let's get into it. I was going to kind of go towards that at the end of the.
Oh, okay.
Members of the billionaire Sackler family and their drug company Purdue Pharma have reached a new settlement deal for the role they played in America's opioid epidemic. Under the deal, with 8 states and the District of Columbia, Sackler family members would pay up to $6 billion in cash to end all the current lawsuits. They're said to be worth almost twice that. In exchange for the payment, they would be shielded from future civil lawsuits. A federal judge rejected an earlier, smaller settlement in which the Sacklers agreed to pay $4.5 billion. A bankruptcy judge still needs to accept this deal. Of course, Purdue Pharma is the maker of Oxy-Contin. Back in 2020, the company pleaded guilty to federal criminal charges for misleading
the public. Those crappy oxys right there, the OPs. You gotta get the OCs, people.
But the Sacklers themselves continue to deny any personal wrongdoing, and they have not faced any criminal prosecution.
Yeah, so really sure. What specific role did they play that they were actually charged? That's just their company profiting off of this?
That they were basically that they were in control. They owned and controlled Purdue Pharma, which Purdue Pharma, along with other pharmaceutical companies, have already had to pay out large settlements to different states and individuals over the opioid epidemic. Basically charges were brought against the Sackler family specifically because they weren't. I guess they were insulated from these civil settlements against the company, and so
of course, that's how companies work.
Yeah.
It's the point of them.
Luckily, somebody was able. Some rogue prosecutor out there was able to prosecute the family directly, and they had initially come up with a settlement offer of $4.5 billion, and there's a lot of shadiness around this too, where they filed for bankruptcy, but they're not really filing for bankruptcy, and it I guess gives them they're essentially seeking protections against other lawsuits in the future, and they agreed to pay 4.5. This judge, this is what the story is kind of about, is just this week rejected their $4.5 billion offer and upped it to $6 billion. That if they paid $6 billion, that would give them protection going forward from lawsuits, which I guess it's something. Apparently, the family's worth $13.5 billion.
So they're being punished by making not as much as they thought they did. Killing so many people. I think
Purdue Pharma, the numbers I was looking at before the show, was like 37 billion. This is like a year. 35. I don't know if it's revenue or profit. It's probably just revenue, but the $6 billion is not going to hurt. They're going to be fine.
I'm sure they have investments.
But yeah. So this money, it's going towards. These are multi-state lawsuits, and the money is supposed to go to the states to help with drug rehabilitation programs. I don't know. That's something else I was trying to find out, like what that means when the states are putting this money towards drug rehabilitation. Is this going to like SAPS programs? I know, like I was in a couple Suboxone clinics, back in the day, I went to two of them, two different ones. And both of those were not subsidized, not covered by insurance. It was a cash thing where you had to have $500 a month or something that I had to pay.
That's about right.
I think it was like $175 for the doctor's appointment and then like $400 for my prescription. So
the methadone clinics are worse. It's like $20 a day, dude.
I remember driving you up there a few times.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how these, like I said, this has been a long, long time ago. Hopefully they've got something worked out where people don't have to jump through these hoops and pay this ridiculous amount of money. I'd like to see stuff like that be subsidized for these.
They're going to create more narcotics squads at the police departments.
It's just all going to the DEA so they can get more ARs.
Yeah, this is interesting. It seems like Biden administration has been making some gestures at going after some of these companies a little bit, but you know, he makes a lot of gestures and doesn't do a whole lot. So,
yeah, he's kind of the king of token movements. Don't really mean anything. They just get people off his back.
That's a pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Play the next one.
Illicit fentanyl to the point that last year, nearly 70,000 people died from opioid overdoses. That is the highest annual death toll ever. And second, you may have seen a bunch of headlines recently about trials and settlements taking place around the country. There have been so many of them, it can genuinely be hard to keep track. But we want to focus on just one company tonight, Purdue Pharma, whose rollout of Oxy-Contin arguably fueled the opioid crisis. We have talked about their relentless push to sell Oxy-Contin before, but more material has come out in the last couple of years, including this spectacular glimpse into a 1997 motivational sales meeting for the company's drug reps. You know you make me want to sell Oxy-Contin, sell Oxy-Contin, get it down now, sell it down now, we're Purdue now, you now, come on now.
The fucking monsters, man. Could you imagine? Jesus Christ. Well,
it's like the capitalist from every meme you see. Like that's the guy.
Sell these incredibly addictive drugs to people and skirt the responsibility when it destroys certain parts of society. Yeah, I don't know. I just got a kick out of that. So that was a member of the Sackler family there at the end. He was also like the VP of sales. We were kind of getting into this earlier, so I would link the fentanyl epidemic, and John talked about it kind of at the beginning. The number of fentanyl-related deaths is now it's the highest year on record. It went up like 30% this last year. It's also the number one cause of death for men ages 18 to 45 in the U.S., which is just it's absolutely insane. No, okay, no. So this is, let's see, where is it? Yeah, okay. Fentanyl this is statesman.com. They're doing a post that more people aged 18 to 45 died of fentanyl overdoses in 2020 than COVID, car accidents, cancer, and suicide combined. Fentanyl overdoses are indeed the number one killer in that age group in the U.S. and by a growing margin, according to data compiled by an advocacy group for federal statistics.
Yeah, I believe it, man.
Yeah.
It's just easy. It's easy to access the stuff, and it's dangerous because of the small quantities involved. You're dealing with micrograms of the stuff when you're dosing it.
Yeah, and the fact that, yeah, so I don't know. I think it's a natural outgrowth of getting a large subset of the population addicted and not providing them something that you or I would want, which is safe access to opiates to
medicine.
Yeah, medicine. Do treatment programs if you want to do treatment. If you don't want to do opiates, offer treatment programs subsidized by the government. If you do want to do opiates, offer safe opiates available for people. When you have this black market, you have these crackdowns, and you've got people that are addicted, that are drug seeking, and fentanyl hits the market, you're just going to have catastrophe, and that's exactly what we've had. I mean, there's people dying left and right, and I didn't realize, but fentanyl is, I guess, completely synthetic. It's not derived from opium like pretty much all the other opiates are. Like, do you know anything about it?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it comes from where everything comes from these days. It comes from China. They make it widely available. It's easy to get, and like I said, pretty dangerous because of the potency of it. It's also not preferable. If people had the choice, they wouldn't choose to use it. It's not a preferable opiate to use.
Yeah, I think for sure. So I was actually just listening to Hamilton talk about this a bit. And he was just talking about the duration of effect is so short that generally dependent people, if you're using fentanyl, unless you're using like the transdermal patches, which are extended release, fentanyl users, like generally you're not able to even make it through a night without redosing. The effects aren't necessarily the most pleasurable. They're good at relieving sickness short term, but
sure.
Yeah, it's not something that you'd want to do unless you were sick. But it is, I guess, it's cheaply available, and it's not dependent on having access to the raw material of opium,
right?
To make it, you're able to make it in these labs. I guess there's labs here in the U.S. Like clandestine labs that make it here. Certainly, there's South America, Mexico, India, China. It's super cheap and super available.
Super effective.
It's super
at respiratory depression. I've always been of the opinion that a large part of the reason so many young people start using this type of stuff is because of the fact that it's stigmatized. If it wasn't so stigmatized, it wouldn't be a rebellious act to use these compounds. If there was more education around the effects and stuff, around safe use and harm reduction, it wouldn't be such a criminal enterprise. I don't know. It just seems like the worst strategy to pursue the path we've pursued for the last 100 years on this.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I know there are a lot of people across the world, like it's illegal in most countries. And the U.S. has more liberal drug laws than most other countries. I know this is, in our mind, not the most liberal place, but when it comes to like drug policy, the U.S. is somewhat ahead of the curve, at least compared to non-European countries.
Yeah, for sure. The stigmatization is a big factor of it. So I know, just speaking for myself, when I first discovered weed and realized that it was really fun and it was kind of harmless, and I remember going back, like thinking about my DARE classes and like, oh, what else did they lie to me about? What are the other things? What other things was I taught were awful in DARE? Like, I got to try all this stuff now, and by golly, I did. But would I have been so? I probably I would have been excited to try it, but I probably wouldn't have been as excited to try all the different things that I was told were terrible and were going to kill you, if it weren't for that stigma. No, yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, these things need to be available, and instead of having obese cops come in and use scare tactics on impressionable 14-year-olds to try to spook them away from trying any substances, maybe have health experts and doctors come in and say, hey, look, these are the actual health effects of using these drugs. A lot of them are safe. A lot of them are harmful. If you're going to use it, this is the best way to use it. Just teach people about the correct ways. And take away that stigma. Take away the I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but
make it uncool.
Yeah, the novelty of it.
Right.
Here's a substance. You want to try it? You're welcome to try it. This is how you ought to do it. You know, if you're going to have a glass, if you're going to drink wine, this is how much wine you're going to drink. You don't want to drink as much as if you'd be drinking beer, and you want to drink, less if you're going to have shots of whiskey. But this is what it is. If you're going to do it, just do it like this. Make sure you have somebody around. This is how long it's going to affect you. If you're going to use cocaine, maybe you don't want to do that if you have a heart condition. If you're going to use ecstasy, make sure you don't take SSRIs.
I plan on going through all this with my daughter when she's old enough, man, and explaining exactly everything to her. That way, that it's not an issue that she doesn't understand. It's not a decision that she's making without prior knowledge, right?
I need to do that. I've had some talks with my daughter about drugs. It's kind of almost been more her bringing things up or us seeing something, and she'll start asking me questions about certain drugs. And I don't know. I haven't really thought it out having that talk with her yet, but I probably should. She was asking me the other day, it's been a couple months ago, we were talking about drugs, and she knows that we talk openly about weed. She knows she remembers visiting me while I was in lockup for my felony weed growing charges, and she's seen cannabis plants around. She knows that whole deal, but she asked something about cocaine, and she's like, yeah, cocaine's like the real addictive one, right? Like that's what we were taught in school, that, you can only do it a couple times before you get addicted. And I started thinking about it.
That's so wrong. That's so wrong.
Literally everyone in her life, me, everyone in my family, including my mom and dad, all my friends, her mother, we've all used cocaine. And no one's, I'm probably the closest to having an issue with it. And my issue wasn't even that bad. I just like to have fun. But nobody else really had an issue with it. They would just use it from time to time and partied with it, a bit in their early to mid and even late 20s, and then people just stop. And that's how it is with most drugs, with most people, most of the time. It's not an issue. Even the really scary, terribly addictive ones.
Cocaine is like the safest thing besides marijuana. I mean, it's incredibly safe, fairly natural.
If you have heart condition, if you use it, I guess long term too. Like there's risk.
Oh yeah, but it does cardiac damage, like any stimulant does.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not specific to cocaine. That's specific to all. I mean,
Oh, I think my understanding is cocaine's significantly more damaging to your heart than like methamphetamine or ecstasy or anything like that.
Yeah, it could definitely be an issue. It could cause heart enlargement. It could, you could tear your freaking aorta. Anyway.
It could also make it really hard to get an erection, which is not fun.
That's not good.
No, it's a way to embarrass yourself.
Try DXM. Jeez.
I never tried to. I don't think I ever tried to get one on DXM.
Even a small dose.
Yeah. I have spent probably 3 hours trying to stick a limp dick into somebody on cocaine before, and God bless them for just staying there letting me try. Never succeeded, but.
Yeah, what were all these like rock stars talking about with the cocaine and the women? I mean, those two don't really go together, do they?
Well, you just got to take your dick pills beforehand, and that's what I found out. Like I would just start doing that, just take some Cialis before. There's some great stories about Joe Walsh from Joe Walsh. Life's been good. My Maserati does 185. I lost my license now. I don't drive. And he would just have women lined up in his hotel and would just like pay them. They're prostitutes, and he'd just pay them to bend over, and he would just do a line, go over, stick one a little bit, and go over, play some guitar music, and do another line, and go fuck another one. And some of these guys have figured it out. So if there's a will, there's a way, I suppose. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyways.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in nootropics, check out my website, MetaMaxPerformance.com. We have 10% off for winter sale still going on, so check it out. Get your nootropics while you can. MetaMaxPerformance.com.
Gentle listeners, Shire Hemp Farms is your number one source for CBD and Delta 8 products. Check us out now for wholesale pricing on Delta 8 carts. We have some new Delta 8 in with new American-made carts. Always the lowest price. Check us out. Support local Kentucky farms, local Kentucky businesses. ShireHempFarms.com.
Instead of that silky smooth voice.
I was trying to do the NPR. Okay.
You wanted to do a segment on chess, which I thought was surprising. You don't play the game, as far as I know, or you didn't used to, at least. But with all the Russia stuff in the news, it makes sense to cover it now. There's a lot of, obviously, Russian influence in chess, massively so. Do you play the game at all?
I know how the pieces move, and I have moved the pieces around. Now, I would kind of
start.
I'm not a chess player. Like, I don't know the strategy, but I've sat down and across from other people, and we have moved pieces around. And I guess played games. I kind of distinguish this, so I do play Magic: The Gathering. I play Magic now. Like, back when I was in high school and I first started playing, I don't consider that playing. Like, I knew how the cards work, but I didn't understand the strategy. Didn't really grasp the concept of the game back then. And that's kind of how I feel about chess. Like, I haven't gotten into it enough to really grasp the concept of the game and to the strategy of how to actually play.
It's pretty fascinating, man.
Yeah, I love the idea of it. I've always wanted to get into it. Usually every 3 or 4 years, I decide I'm going to be a grandmaster for about 2 days, and I'll get the online, and I'll start playing the computer online and do terribly. But I enjoy keeping up with what's going on in the chess world. You know, I like watching documentaries about Bobby Fischer and Magnus Carlsen and Garry Kasparov, and it is fascinating in the history of the game. It goes back early medieval times, maybe pre-medieval times. I don't know. You tell me about it. I know you're a player, and this is why I wanted to.
Well, I don't know. I don't play much anymore, but I used to be into the game. I never studied that much. You have to really study to become good. You know, the whole thing with chess, like, it's, easy to learn, impossible to master. That's the whole thing of it. It's sort of genius, the fact that they figured this game out in the 1400s, and it's almost like a perfect game. I mean, there's been some changes to it, but the Google DeepMind project that was their first goal, was to make the chess engines. Start with this hilarious clip of Grischuk. You may have seen. This is Grischuk versus Kuka, the German computerized ARM.
Опять. Ну что ж, полезно пешками погоняться за словами. И вот D4. Очень важный ход. Соперник взрывает игру. Белый, в принципе, готовы к борьбе по центру. Все не стоит хорошо.
That thing would mess you up, man.
Yeah.
It's like these little sharp things on it, too, to move the pieces. It, like, goes right at Grischuk's face.
Yeah, I believe that is a Fanuc brand robot. Looks like it. The color's right for a Fanuc.
It's just one of the normal ARM robots, I think, right?
Yeah. They got a bunch of different brands. Fanuc, ABB, Panasonic, Motoman. This is what I used to work on for several years.
Oh, really? You built the robots?
No, I didn't build them. I worked in car part manufacturer plants, and I would do maintenance on them. So the little gripper things would mess up. I'd go over and fix those, or we call it the elbow on the robot. Sometimes the gearing would strip out. We'd have to go in there, and I'd reset the.
I hear you, brother. I hate when that happens.
Whatever. Shit like that. It's all dumb.
Yeah, modern chess evolved in the 1400s in Europe. There was an earlier game from India that it was evolved from, but there are. I want to go through a little bit of the sort of history here. So there's two organizations that if you play in the U.S., you're probably familiar with. There's the USCF, which the United States are chess organization that we have, and we have tournaments in the United States only through USCF. And the international organization is FIDE, that is originated out of France, but it mostly became a Soviet and Russian-funded organization. And they are the ones who give out the ratings. FIDE ratings are like the official ratings. If you want to become like a grandmaster, you have to have I think it's a 2300 FIDE, and you have to get norms. From World War II until 1991, when the Soviet Union was dissolved, there was only one world champion who was not from the Soviet Union, Bobby Fischer. All the rest of them were Russian or Soviet. There are computers now that beat humans at chess, like by a wide margin. I'm not sure if you remember, but in '97 it was a pretty big deal when Deep Blue initially beat Garry Kasparov, because it was the first time a chess computer had beaten a sitting world champion. 1997. Actually, going to play a clip of that here. I remember this vividly, man. It was over at this point. It was the end of history. The computers were going to take over. Artificial intelligence was on its way.
Like, basically at this point, there will never be another person that's going to be the top computer ever, right?
No, no, never again. The Google DeepMind machine learning stuff is pretty cool, man. What they're doing with it. But like, even like the computer on your phone, it could beat like Magnus Carlsen nowadays. So this is Kasparov and Deep Blue.
The afternoon of May 11th, 1997. Game 6, the deciding game. Deep Blue challenges Kasparov's brain with an array of 256 processors that can examine 200 million possible moves every second. They call it the brute force approach. Kasparov doesn't try, he can't try, to consider every possible move. He knows from experience what's important, and he relies on the human mind's extraordinary ability to recognize and remember patterns. The patterns of chess experience lived in Deep Blue's software, too.
So this was a brute force approach method where it basically predicted all the possible moves, or at least a certain depth, they call it in chess engines. But with the brute force approach, the computer still doesn't understand strategy. So in the first match with Deep Blue, Kasparov was able to beat the computer because it didn't understand certain strategies. And even though computers can do so many calculations per second, way faster than a human can, it doesn't understand strategy. And the brute force method doesn't work that well on chess simply because of the basically infinite combination of moves. Like once you're, 2 or 3 moves down the line, it's so many variations to calculate that computers can't even really keep up. That's why the machine learning is now better than brute force approach methods. And even brute force engines like Stockfish still need strategy and sort of opening theory programmed in, closing theory, endgame theory programmed in, or it doesn't work. So the game is just too complicated.
Would it be fair to say that, especially the earlier engines, that they lacked creativity, and that was like that? I guess that was what was missing from the engine, that they were able to analyze the board and find certain pathways within the next 3 moves to get into an advantageous position, but they didn't lack the creativity to, well, like you were saying, develop a strategy for how to win. It was just, there's like a point system, right? And so they're just analyzing the best way to get ahead on points within the depth of however many moves, 3, 4, 5.
Well, basically what they're doing is they're looking ahead. They're predicting all possible future moves and the resulting positions and the relative strength of the position. But the problem is it's hard for a computer to determine what a good position is. That's reasoning. Computers can't reason. Also, humans are able to recognize patterns, and that's something until these machine learning software were written and the machine learning architecture was built, computers couldn't recognize patterns that way. They sort of can now, though, with the way the machine learning works. So yeah, there are these computer chess championships that take place. TCEC is called, and the computers just play against other computers. It's actually pretty cool. The games are really weird. Like if you look at them, they don't look like a human game, but this is how chess is played now. Grandmasters in tournaments, they'll use computers to analyze opening positions, 20, 25, sometimes 30 moves into a game to try to get a variation that's unique, because they memorize every position, up to move 20 essentially, and then use computers to analyze past that to see what's good. And we'll get into that a little bit later, because that's a big bone of contention with Bobby Fischer. So Magnus Carlsen, world champ, he's currently rated 2865 in the FIDE rating system. He announced it, I believe the end of last year. His goal was to hit 2900, first ever. No humans ever hit 2900. That was his plan. It doesn't look like he's going to make it, man. It's just so hard to gain rating points when you're the top player in the world, because you have to play against other top players. And when you win, you only get so many points based on your relative rating to your opponent. And when you're rated higher than them, you don't get that many rating points for beating them. If you lose to them, you lose a lot of points, though. That's why it's tough.
Yeah.
It's like, do you ever play a game where you like ladder that way?
Yeah. So, Magic the Gathering, specifically Magic Online, which is the older Magic the Gathering card engine. They have a point system like that, where it's not the same. So like a 2000 would be damn near perfect in it. And yeah, the higher you get, so I got up to like an 1830, which is pretty good. But once you get to that point, it's really hard to get higher, because there's obviously a small amount of people that have a higher point, and then like beating, well, yeah. So it's hard to get a game against somebody that's better than you at that point to get more points. And if you're beating people that are worse than you, you don't really get, like, you can win 5 games in a row against people rated 1700, and it's barely going to move your score. I guess that makes sense. I'm assuming that's about the same. Yeah.
Did you play? Was it sealed or what? What was the format?
It was just a constructed across the board. It was mostly modern. Modern Legacy is what I was playing. But yeah, they do a combined constructed rating.
I see. Okay. Well, Stockfish, the chess engine that is used on basically the non-machine learning engine that's basically the top engine right now, is rated over 3,500 at this point. There's updates for it all the time that improves that as well. So yeah, that's like 700 points higher than Magnus, which is insanely high. No human could ever beat Stockfish, ever, most likely. I don't even think it's possible at this point. And then the Google DeepMind project has made a ton of these engines. The one in TCEC is Leela Chess Zero, based on Alpha Zero, which is the primary sort of strongest engine considered on the planet right now. The reason Alpha Zero is not in the TCEC, though, is because in TCEC, all the computers have to run the same hardware with similar sort of specifications. And basically, the way the machine learning chess computers work, the more hardware, the more processing power you give it, the better it's going to get. There's really no way to determine the rating. It's just based on the hardware at this point. It's, probably double Magnus if you give it enough hardware. Primarily, I wanted to focus on Bobby Fischer, of course, because of Russia being in the news right now.
Yeah,
invading their neighbor.
That is kind of what brought me into this. I watched a little video on YouTube about, the guy that defeated the Soviet Union without arms, and he's just an interesting guy. He's very. Both of his parents were doctors, incredibly intelligent people. His mother was Jewish, and with all this talk about Putin denazifying, I thought, what better than to learn about a very level-headed, because his parents were very smart, obviously not anti-Semitic because his mother was Jewish, guy, and take him as our shining beacon of how to defeat the Soviet Union, and how with our principles and level-headedness and lack of anti-Semitism we can combat Putin.
All right.
Anyways,
I'm not sure if I agree with all that, but
am I wrong? I didn't watch too much of the video. Maybe I'm wrong about who Bobby Fischer was.
Here's an early Bobby Fischer interview.
Was she a good player?
No, not too good. The women are really very good players. I mean, I guess I could give every one of them a night and still win easily. Even the world champion, this Russian woman, Bukova, they're all night easily.
Why is this? Do women make bad chess players?
Oh, they're terrible chess players. I mean, some are better than others, But,
Why
men don't play in men's tournaments. I don't know why. I guess they're just not so smart.
Does it apply to all women, do you think?
Well, I guess so. I don't know. They have never turned out a good woman chess player. Never one that could ever stand up against a man in the history of chess.
All right. I love that interview.
Is that true?
What?
Is that true? Are there in the top tier? How many women are in the top tier of chess players?
Not that many. There's a few, but there's none in the top 10. There's a couple in the top 100, though. Bobby Fischer changed his position on women. He's real young in this, obviously. He sort of modulates a position later in life on women, on the women thing. But yeah, this is a pretty. It gives you a good idea, bro.
I don't know. I mean, it's a
They're
good
just not
question.
very smart.
They're just not very smart. I mean, what are you going to do? I don't know.
They're women. I mean, what do you expect?
They're women. Come on. I'll give them a night. Hey, honey, you can have a night. I still beat you. What are you going to do?
See, he is a goon, ain't he? It's like the movie where they were brothers in the Bronx.
But, I mean, if you have a problem like that, I mean, we could just step outside. We could figure it out.
Fucking damn right, screw. How you like me now? My boy's wicked smart.
No, Matt Damon.
Oh.
Anyway, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Yeah, what you were talking about was this match of the century, they called it. Fischer-Spassky, the World Championship match where Fischer won the championship. Fischer won the U.S. Championship in 1945. At age 14, he was and still is the youngest person ever to win the U.S. Title. He was indeed a chess prodigy, maybe one of the best of all time, perhaps the best. It's really arguable. His early career, he culminated in this 1962 Candidates Tournament. This is basically the world playoffs to determine who's going to face the challenger for world championship status. Is the candidates. In 62, he placed 4 out of 8. So that was, in his mind, a defeat to the Soviets. He placed behind Tigran Petrosian, Efim Geller, and Paul Keres in 4th. He accused the Soviets of collusion against him after this loss. What they did is they basically, against the other Soviet players, they would take quick draws, easy games, to save their energy to beat Fischer. And they changed the format after that. So they can't do it anymore. But maybe the only time Fischer's paranoia was real.
So they had like a calculated strategy just to beat Fischer, and it involved, I guess, not. I don't know, what would you say? It would be like an unsportsmanlike.
It was collusion.
It was it was collusion. It was technically okay under the rules, but it was unsportsmanlike to do it.
Well, you can't prove that somebody made it a quick draw. I mean, but you can look at the time they took to make the moves, and you can look at the game itself. It's all recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Seems pretty obvious that that's exactly what happened. But, Fischer complained about everything. He always accused everybody of everything. He was incredibly paranoid. He's very strange personality-wise. This guy was very unusual in a lot of ways. This is the the tournament. This is the tournament of the match of the century. Spassky versus Fischer. If you saw the Queen's Gambit, this is what it was based around. This showdown between the U.S. and Russia.
Well, Spassky is waiting.
Right, and waiting and wondering whether Bobby will show or not show. And there's absolutely dead silence in the hall.
Spassky is pacing, he's nervous, and...
Wait, here comes Fischer, coming on the stage saying that he was caught in traffic. And I think Spassky was visibly relieved.
And also perhaps pained.
It didn't look like this match would happen, but finally it happened. And
there it is. There's the handshake. The match of the century begins. Here it is. Crazy time in history. So this was his comeback. He basically retired in I think 62, but he came out of retirement to win the world championship because that's what he was determined to do. He crushed all of his competition leading up to this. He defeated Mikhail Tal, Korchnoi, Tigran Petrosian, destroyed Taimanov and Bent Larson. He crushed the entire field, and then he beat Spassky.
Okay, so what was it? What was it about the match that makes it the game of the century? That's what. There was another one that I guess they call it the game of the century. Maybe there's two of them that are called that, but it was against this guy called David Byrne in 1956. And this
I might have it right here, the Immortal game, if that's the one you're... Daniel Byrne?
This is 13-year-old future world champion Bobby Fischer against Donald Byrne.
Yeah, I've got the analysis. We're going to go through that game. That's called that's Fischer's Immortal.
Okay.
They give nicknames to some of these games, and they're sort of the games everybody knows. They're like the first ones you learn when you learn about chess. But Fischer's Immortal is this specific game you're talking about.
Okay.
I wanted to point out here, Magnus Carlsen, his play style, he's like granite. Like you cannot, he will wear you down, dude. He's not a super aggressive attacker. He plays a pretty boring style, but he just slowly beats you over the course of the game and outplays you.
It's like small incremental advantages over the course of time.
He's a boa constrictor, man.
Okay.
But Fischer, he was an attacking player. He was very aggressive. He was a true genius, very creative, and he added a lot of things to the game that still are around to this day. So yeah, this is the Immortal, Fischer's Immortal. We'll go through it here. Very cool game.
So that's what I'm interested in. You were talking about these games. You were talking about the games with the computers earlier, and you can tell that they're not humans playing it. And I'm looking at this. I'm reading comments about this, and what am I looking? Wow. Tell me what's so beautiful about this, because everybody that knows chess is looking at this and just they're amazed and they think it's a beautiful thing to look at.
It'll be obvious once you see it.
Okay.
You asked me another question earlier. The reason that the Fischer-Spassky game was important, right? I think that was the question.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I mentioned it earlier, but I'll say it again. And it wasn't really, there was basically only two other times when it was a non-Soviet or non-Russian world champion, but between World War II and the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Fischer was the only non-Soviet world champion. He went over there to Moscow to take that title away from them for the Americans, and he did. And the Russians were not happy about it, dude. Dude, in Russia, chess is like football over here or something. It's their biggest thing. It's bigger than soccer. You know, in most of Europe, it's soccer, but in Russia, it's chess, man. Okay, so here we go. This is Fischer's Immortal. Knight F3, Knight F6, C4, G6. Fischer plays the Grunfeld here. So we have Knight C3, Bishop G7, D4, castles. So Fischer playing a modern opening here. Modern openings, you don't control the center with pawns. You control them You allow your opponent to control the center with pawns, and then you attack the center from a distance with like this bishop. Not that arrow. You don't occupy the center directly, but in the Grunfeld you do. So here we get bishop f4, and Fischer goes d5, Grunfeld, queen b3, common here, putting pressure on this pawn. This prevents the bishop from being developed because the pawn would fall. D captures, queen captures, c6. White takes the center with e4, knight d7, rook d1, knight b6, and queen was under attack, so the queen moves, queen c5. Fischer plays bishop g4. This is not something you typically want to allow. This probably wouldn't be allowed nowadays. You would want to prevent that with like h3 or something. And here's the first mistake. You can see the evaluation dropping here on the left side of the screen.
What's the evaluation? What's that mean?
The computer evaluates the position, and it's giving black -2 here, so it's winning. It's a winning position for black.
Okay.
See, the white bar is shrunk. Like if you go back one, it'll even out again. This is the even position.
Okay.
And white makes a mistake here. First of all, this is a positional mistake. You've already developed the bishop to f6, and now you're going to waste a tempo to move it again. You could have just developed it to g5 initially. So you're wasting a tempo for one. And for two, it allows black a genius move by Bobby Fischer here. Unbelievably brilliant move. Knight a4. Now, at first glance, it looks like you just lose the knight, right?
Yeah, but I guess you're also threatening the queen. But you wouldn't be threatening it. But yeah, the knight can just take it. Okay, yeah.
The knight looks like the knight can just take it.
Yeah.
But white can't just take it. If white just takes it, then black plays, the pawn falls here because this knight was defending the pawn. You see that?
Okay. Yeah.
So the knight moves, the pawn falls, so you have a pawn for a knight, but that's, white's still up material here, but the problem is now the queen is attacked, so black wins a tempo here, so, maybe the queen moves, and then this bishop falls, and now black's up material. And the knight here cannot recapture because it's pinned to the rook by the bishop. You see that?
Okay.
Let's do it again.
All right.
This is the brilliancy. Knight a4. It looks like you could just take it, but you really can't because this pawn is weak. And once you take it, you're putting pressure on the queen here. The queen has to move, and then you just capture the bishop. And the knight can't recapture because it's pinned. So after knight a4, white moves the queen because, as we just discussed, he can't take the knight. It's poisoned. But it doesn't matter because the problem is now Bobby just captures the knight and the pawn is still weak. White recaptures with the b pawn. Then Bobby takes the center, pawn, e4 pawn. And the problem with white's position here is white is stuck in the center of the board. He hasn't developed his light square bishop yet, and he can't castle to safety. White takes on e7, attacking both these pieces. Bobby moves the queen, giving up the exchange here, it looks like, but not really.
Oh, okay. And he couldn't. I was thinking, why can't the queen can't take the bishop because then the other queen,
the queen's defending,
would take that queen. Okay.
From a distance, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So Bobby moves the queen to b6. White trying desperately to develop here so he can castle. Doesn't have time. Bobby Fischer captures on c3. White tries to defend here by attacking the queen. He can't just capture the rook because he's too far behind. He's trying to get to safety here. Rookie 8 check. Notice something here. Bobby is sacrificing his queen on this move.
So
White attacks the queen.
This is what makes it like, I guess, kind of like the legendary game, right? That he sacrifices the queen.
There's three things.
I'm hearing.
Knight A4 was the original brilliancy. This Knight A4 was a brilliancy. Nobody would have come up with this shit. Nobody. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe there's a couple of GMs, top GMs out there that could have came up with this strategy, but White attacks the queen, and Bobby gives check. So I can't capture the queen yet. And now on this move, Bobby just moves the bishop. He gives up the queen in order to attack this bishop with check. White takes the queen, and now he's dead lost. Bishop C4 check. King has to go to G1. Now Knight E2 check. King only squares F1, going in front of the bishop again. So Bobby takes with a discovered check on the king. This is called a windmill. White king can't go here because of the rook, so he has to go back to G1. Now black can check him again with the knight. And now he has to go in front of the bishop again. This is called, like I said, this is called a windmill. Absolutely devastating attack. And now Bobby calmly takes the B pawn, exposing an attack on the queen. Queen's running out of squares. Queen takes B6. Bobby captures the rook, making some room for the king here to escape. But it doesn't matter. It's too late. Fischer just hunts him down here at this point. Now he goes in for the kill. So that's it. That's Fischer's Immortal. When he was 13, he made this brilliancy with the Knight A4 and then the windmill and the Queen Sacrifice. Just an excellent, excellent game, man. You can see Fischer's attacking style, very aggressive. And he came up with these brilliant ideas like that nobody would ever think of. Incredibly creative. But he was definitely a diva. He always argued with all the officials who put on the tournaments. He would argue with them. He would demand all these different things that he wanted. Like he didn't like people in the room with him. He didn't like any noise. He didn't like anything, basically. He was a complainer. He refused to defend his title against Karpov because he won the world championship against Spassky. He didn't want to defend it. Because he couldn't come to an agreement over the terms to hold the tournament with the FIDE officials. There's a 60 Minutes interview here I'm going to play a little bit of. They said it took 6 months to get him to agree to do this interview. 1972.
Personality, your background.
This championship match between you and Spassky, is it in any sense a grudge match?
In a sense. I mean, not personally against me, against Spassky, because, I don't care 2 cents about him one way or the other. He's just another guy. But it's against the Russians and, all the lies they've been saying about me.
Do you worry about Spassky?
Not overly. I mean, he's a little better, I think, than the other Russians I've taken on in this series. But,
You've played Spassky. He's beaten you, but you've never beaten him.
Yeah, well, we've only played a few games. So we were just the other day looking through that his games from that Moscow event, that Alekin tournament, and they were atrocious games. He was really he was lost in half the games in that tournament. Really bad games on his part.
Why would that happen to a man who, after all, is the champion of the world?
Well, the champion of the world. First of all, I didn't compete, so he's not really much of a champion. But, he's the best they've got.
I love that bravado.
Where do you get your confidence?
He's champion of the world just because I wasn't there. Come on, people.
He reminds me of Trump, doesn't he?
I was thinking that. I was thinking that. Well, he was all right. It was sloppy. The games were sloppy. It was sloppy. He's only the world champion because I wasn't there. I seriously thought that. Like you said something, I was like, man, that sounds kind of Trumpy. I guess they're both that awful New York accent.
Yeah, that plays a part in it, I think, but in the resemblance, but also like the tone and like the
the bravado and the machismo and the.
I buy it from Fischer though more than Trump maybe. Like,
well, yeah, of course. I mean, he can prove it. You know, he's got something to back it up with.
For some reason, Bobby Fischer never seemed to grow up. Like his personality is that of a child, even all the way through his life almost. Some of his later interviews, he seems more normal, but like in a lot of these interviews, he seems like a grown-up child, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely, I don't know, a bit off. Yeah, childish, I guess. Childish. He's got that, feels like a 16-year-old, 17-year-old.
Yeah. It's like a child actor thing, but maybe way worse.
Maybe his early success, you know, it's arrested development.
There's a lot of speculation that he has, you know, mental issues, which I don't know if I buy. I don't know. Maybe borderline stuff, but after he beat Spassky, he refused to defend the world championship against Karpov, and he went into retirement. For 20 years, he was in hiding, basically. Not in hiding, but not playing chess. He did come out in 1992 to play again against Spassky in Yugoslavia. Now, at the time, this is during the Yugoslav wars, and the U.S. had placed an embargo on Yugoslavia, and Fischer was warned not to go and not to play, or he would face charges for violating the embargo. He insisted that he was still the world champion because the Soviets, including Karpov, Korchnoi, and Kasparov, were fixing games. And he did go. He did play, beat Spassky. He was issued an arrest warrant, and he went on the run. Through this period, he spent time in Hungary and the Philippines. He was eventually arrested in Japan in 2004 for traveling with invalid passport. Supposedly, Boris Spassky wrote to George H.W. Bush to try to get Fischer some mercy. Fischer himself wrote to Colin Powell to renounce his U.S. citizenship, but everybody ignored him. Eventually, Iceland granted him citizenship for basically bringing notoriety. He died in 2008 with no biological children. He suffered from kidney failure after refusing medical treatment for a urinary tract blockage. He would not take any medicine or get treatment, and he died fairly young. This is the last interview with him alive that I have seen.
Then you sort of put creativity first. Right. Now, let me explain something about Fischer Random. I've never made any claims that this is the greatest thing, you know, since puffed weed or whatever, you know what I mean? I never made any claims saying that this is perfect. What I say is, it's much better than the old chess. Now, for example, let's say you could have 1 million chess-like games, right? Maybe 1 million of them, or 10 million would be better than Fischer Random. But the point about Fischer Random is, it's basically the same as the old chess, except you get rid of the theory, and it's very easy to remember the rules.
So here he seems pretty normal. He doesn't seem overly like Arrested Development type scenario. Speaks pretty easily and knowledgeably. He's talking about Fischer Random Chess 960, this variant he invented.
It's a variant of the game?
Yeah, it's a very popular variant. The whole point of it is to do away with the opening theory, because basically what I explained earlier about opening theory, you basically memorize positions, 20, 25, up to 30 moves ahead, using chess computers to look for best moves, unique moves that people don't expect, essentially. And Fischer's whole point was, this is ruining the game. This is why he's been hating on chess for a long time based on this. he doesn't like it. He doesn't think it's the spirit of the game. In his mind, he values the creativity and the knowing the game more than memorizing.
Mm-hmm. And this would be kind of in contrast to, I guess my understanding is like Magnus Carlsen, where he's the way it was I had it explained to me is he's Magnus Carlsen is kind of like the culmination of just trying to memorize the machine learning, using the computers to just analyze as many games as possible and take out, I guess, the human aspect of strategy and creativity and just use what, the computer developed strategies to best win.
I wouldn't describe it that way.
Okay.
You still have to play the rest of the game, but the problem is you're going to have a better position out of the opening if you have this unique idea that you planned out ahead of time. You still have to play the middle game. You still have to know the end game, but the opening can give you an advantageous position just based on you memorizing a lot of moves.
So in Magic, there are certain players, like a lot of the Japanese players, for example, that they learn how to use a hypergeometric distribution calculator, which is you're figuring percentages based on population size. And when they explain the game, I guess this would be more like a mid to late game thing. They are just constantly looking at each card, going through in their head, all right, what card do I need? In this board state, what is the best card that I can draw? What are my percentages to draw that card versus what would be the second best? And what are my percentages to draw it? And so they will play that turn based on, okay, if I've got a 75% chance to draw my second best card, whereas I've got a 20% to draw the best, should I play towards drawing my second? I should probably play towards developing a board state to where my second best card is going to be more advantageous than my best card. It's just all based on understanding the numbers and just kind of breaking down percentages, I guess, step by step, as opposed to like really employing strategy. It's just based on numbers. What's the best play I can make turn by turn? Whereas somebody like an LSV, he's not really breaking down the numbers in the same way and thinking about his chances to draw X card from 40 cards left in his deck. It's these wild, I guess he would kind of be like the Bobby Fischer without the Bobby Fischer, where is these wild plays, these lines of attack that no one else sees, and just kind of the embodiment of creativity and not winning through those little small incremental advances. It's a couple flurries of really big plays that just sweeps the game up.
The comparison you could make there, yeah. So, like, playing to win as opposed to just playing for a draw could be the difference. Mm-hmm. Like, people have criticized Magnus for too many draw or playing drawish games, but Fischer obviously was a very controversial figure. Wasn't really well liked even at the time by most people. He was very anti-Semitic, as you mentioned. He did have a Jewish mother. Also, his father was probably Jewish, based on interviews and stuff. And there was a documentary done trying to dig into who maybe his real father was, because the person that supposedly it was, apparently it wasn't. It was this other Jewish fellow. There's tons of clips of him being anti-Semitic, despite being literally Jewish. I'm not sure what the basis of that is, where that comes from, but here's this is an interview he did hours after the 9/11 attacks.
Our whole foreign policy has been wrong for the last several hundred years. We are going to pull back all our troops from all over the world. We're going to stop supporting Israel, and so on. You see? And they're not going to admit.
So the first part of this, I can get on board with most of it, man. This is him in the Philippines. He spent a lot of time in the Philippines on a radio station there.
No, they're going to say these terrorists, these criminals, this cowardly act will be punished. You know, and I expect soon there's going to be a new president after the White House is blown up. He'll be in the Colorado mountains, you know, hundreds of feet underneath the Rocky Mountains there, saying, this dastardly act of blowing up the White House will be punished. You know, just constantly talk about punishing these cowardly people until the United States is destroyed. The United States is not going to be reasonable, you know? It's not going to admit that it's the bad guy, and it's always been the bad guy. It was the bad guy in World War II. It was the bad guy in World War I. It was the bad guy when it invaded the Philippines, took it from Spain. It was the bad guy when the white man came and killed the American Indians. When it brought the
sounds like a song.
Yeah, I can get on board with most of this, but just wait.
It's always been the bad guy. Democracy is just a lot of bullshit.
I don't know if I'd be saying this like hours after the September 11th attacks, but
it's just been a cover for the criminal nature of the United States of America.
There are fears, Bobby, that this might start something worse, like a third world war. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's possible. Unfortunately, that's the big danger, that the Jews, these lunatic people, are going to take us all with them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping, as I say, for a 7 days in May scenario where sane people will take over the U.S. now. You know what I mean?
Sane people.
Sane people. Military people, yes. They will imprison the Jews. They will execute several 100,000 of them at least. And they will bring home all the troops from the U.S.
So I'm not sure if you understood or caught all that, but he's talking about 7 Days in May. This is an old movie where there was a military coup in the United States. He's hoping for a military coup and apparently to execute hundreds of thousands of Jews.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that somebody could do. See, this is my understanding, the vision I had in my head of who Bobby Fischer was. I think I'd heard some of these interviews at some point. It's kind of stuck with me.
This is the most egregious one I heard.
Like this, there was one. It might have been when he was arrested or something. He just looked really haggard and disheveled, and there was a lot of yelling and the Jews coming up quite often.
I guess he believes in the theory that the Jews are in charge of like the American government, I guess, is what it seems like.
Yeah, so that's something else. Like, I was trying to figure out what he meant by that. You know, is it just the Jews? Are they inherently causing issues? Is it a problem because they're in control of the government? Are they in control of industry so much that they're able to cause all these problems? Or are they causing the problems in Israel? Are they here causing problems? I don't. He doesn't really lay it out very well, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
So last week there was this controversy with Sergei Karyakin. He is a top 10 player in the world. He qualified for the candidates, which again is basically the playoffs for the challenger to the World Championship. And he's actually Ukrainian, but he's been supporting Putin. Here's a tweet that he deleted. Although if you check his Twitter, there's tons of other ones like. This is a joke he posted. Sergei Karyakin here. Taxi driver in Dubai, : Where are you from? From Russia. Russia is great. Our prime minister is there now. In a few years, we will be close friends with Russia. We are not so stupid as Ukraine. 3 crying, laughing faces. So yeah, this one got him some hot water, man. And he has since doubled down on his pro-Putin stance. Also, Russia and Belarus are banned. FIDE banned. This is incredible news. Unbelievable, actually. Russia and Belarus are banned from holding official FIDE chess competitions and events. Russian and Belarusian players banned from displaying national flags at FIDE-rated events, and national anthems will not be played. And FIDE will terminate all sponsorship agreements with Russian or Belarusian sanctioned and or state-controlled companies. FIDE is primarily funded by Russian companies like Gaznor. What is that the name of it? Oh, Gazprom. They're national oil. And Nornickel. These are state-owned companies.
Mm-hmm.
Huge news, man. FIDE canceling Russia. It's really hard to imagine. FIDE is staffed mostly by Russians. Like old-timey Russians, too.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy, man.
Huh. Yeah, so this would be like the Super Bowl not being played in... Well, I guess not, because the Super Bowl is just a strictly U.S. based. But
I mean, this is... Like I said, this is a huge deal, man. Pretty insane. This is probably one of the biggest blows to Putin in terms of reputation. He's probably pissed about this one, man. Nepo...
yeah, a lot of like the Russian nationalism is kind of built around their success and dominance in the game of chess, too, and not being able to...
It's a huge national pride for them.
Yeah, not being able to display that dominance on the world stage is a bit of an issue when you know the leader is as nationalistic as he is.
Yeah, it's just like even FIDE is like, no, Putin, you got to stop, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Russian chess players have been coming out in support of Ukraine. Obviously, they can't come out, strongly, openly against Putin because of the way the country is. But here's Nepo's tweet. History has seen many Black Thursdays, but today is blacker than the others. He tweets. And I wanted to end this on some Kasparov. Because Kasparov is an anti-Russian, not anti-Russian, but anti-Soviet activist. He's very pro-Western. He's he's the Russian version of, like some crazy tanky or something. Like he's basically a State Department shill at this point. Here's Kasparov with Sam Harris.
As its state.
Talking about Russia-Ukraine.
And Putin is a mafia boss, capo di tutti capi. And he, again, give him credit. He built this very sophisticated system where loyalty it's being exchanged for personal gains. But people who always show loyalty to him for personal gains, for benefits, I don't think they're willing to die for him. Whether they are just, he's from his government, security apparatus, or his military. That's why I'm so adamant demanding the no-fly zone, because I don't think that Russian pilots will be willing to sacrifice their lives to give Putin a pretext to start a war against NATO. I want to see how many Russian pilots or Russian generals will follow Putin's orders to enter confrontation with NATO, because that's, for them, it's a suicide. And I don't think that the morale in Russian army, in Russian political circles, in security apparatus, can resemble anything that we witnessed in Hitler Germany or Stalin Soviet Union. Because many old dictatorships, they had this ideology.
So yeah, he's advocating for some pretty crazy stuff, man. The no-fly zone, huh? Seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, it's easy to advocate when, I don't know. I'll say, I think everybody gets wrapped up in that if that goes that way.
He's trying to force regime change. He wants to get rid of Putin. And he's claiming that the pilots won't fly. Like if there's no fly zone, the pilots won't fly. They'd rather disobey their superiors than to potentially get killed by the Americans, which I'm not,
not so sure about that.
Here's a little bit later where we get some really juicy details.
So you've spoken two phrases that I think are going to strike fear in many people. The first is a no-fly zone, and the second is regime change. And each in their own way, by a slightly different logic, seems to invite a serious escalation of the conflict and even the threat of a nuclear war, right? So, I mean, many people are looking at this situation and all of their bandwidth is taken up with a concern about just avoiding World War III. How do we prosecute this conflict in such a way as to know that we're not going to go over the brink here? And so let's take them by turns. A no-fly zone. A no-fly zone seems synonymous with a shooting war between the U.S./EU and Russia, which is to say a shooting war, a conventional shooting war with nuclear armed powers where one is run by a psychopath who increasingly has less and less to lose and who's already threatened in some form to use nuclear weapons if he's antagonized. So talk to me about a no-fly zone. How is it that you can advocate that?
Again, we're dealing with a strategic question because you raised...
Sorry, folks. You'll have to sign up on samharris.org to find out Kasparov's reasoning behind the no-fly zone.
God, Sam.
If you'd like to continue listening to this conversation, you'll...
Old Sam Harris got me again. I was listening to that like, all right, finally get some explanation here.
Yeah.
But no.
Getting into the meat of it. Yeah. Interesting. I was listening to this podcast earlier.
Oh, you listened to the whole thing?
No, I didn't listen to the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
I listened to most of the YouTube portion of it.
I've heard enough Kasparov stuff. I'm sure I could probably give you his take. He's very anti-Soviet, which I think he was like arrested and deported for criticizing the Soviet Union. So
he's got a personal grudge.
Yes, he does. All right, man. We're way past time. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun stuff. I enjoyed learning about chess. So I guess we'll see you next week.
Later, man. Have a good one.
Peace.